Comrades, we have a new problem. A Western Cape farmer runs over a 6-year-old for allegedly stealing an orange. A farmer, Christopher Stoneman, ran over the little boy, breaking both of his legs on Friday last week after accusing him of stealing an orange from his farm. As usual, the story is reported, but the picture of this idiot is not shown anywhere. Now, the child is due to undergo an operation at the Paarl Provincial Hospital on Wednesday, while the idiot racist is asking for bail. Remember, we just had an incident of two racist white men killing two women and feeding them to the dogs not long ago. And now they want to kill children. AfriForum will not say anything about this. The DA will not say anything about this. Freedom Front Plus will not say anything about this. And truth be told, since from 1994 until today, the government has been useless in dealing with racists in this country. Comrades, we have a new problem. A Western Cape farmer runs over a 6-year-old for allegedly stealing an orange. A farmer, Christopher Stoneman, ran over the little boy, breaking both of his legs on Friday last week after accusing him of stealing an orange from his farm. As usual, the story is reported, but the picture of this idiot is not shown anywhere. Now, the child is due to undergo an operation at the Paarl Provincial Hospital on Wednesday, while the idiot racist is asking for bail. Remember, we just had an incident of two racist white men killing two women and feeding them to the dogs not long ago. And now they want to kill children. AfriForum will not say anything about this. The DA will not say anything about this. Freedom Front Plus will not say anything about this. And truth be told, since from 1994 until today, the government has been useless in dealing with racists in this country.
Greetings, everyone. I hope you are fine. I hope you are doing well. And I will appreciate if you can just smash the subscribe button, smash that like button like never before. I didn't expect to talk about this topic, but I said to myself, I wouldn't do any justice if I don't talk about this topic, because it's very important to talk about the things that we are going through. And some people might ask, why are we so concerned about such things? It's because most people, or when it comes to mainstream media doesn't report about these things in most cases. So that is why we have to try by all means to talk about these things, irregardless of our small audience. But we have to make sure that we do the right thing by addressing these things. We don't only talk about the negative things, but we also talk about the positive things. A 6-year-old ran over by a farmer. This man is uncivilized, and I believe that he has to be given his award of being uncivilized. A 6-year-old. Just imagine a 6-year-old in your house, or a 6-year-old, maybe a 6-year-old of your neighbor. Maybe a 6-year-old is your niece or your nephew. Maybe a 6-year-old is your daughter or is your son. Just look at them right now. They are not in a state of fully understanding the difference between right and wrong. You tell them something now, then after 30 minutes, they've forgotten. They repeat the very same mistake. So in other words, you have to be patient with them. So there's no way we can allow a war between a 6-year-old and a 70-year-old, because there's a huge gap. The other one is mature and the other one is immature. In other words, a 6-year-old cannot fully understand the difference between right and wrong, because he is a 6-year-old. A 6-year-old is stubborn. A 6-year-old cannot remember everything. In other words, a 6-year-old doesn't even understand when we say 1994 was a scam. In other words, a 6-year-old is a 6-year-old, is immature. A 6-year-old is a baby. A 6-year-old is a child. So this child, this baby, a 6-year-old, he was walking along with his mom, and then he saw a tree of oranges. And some of the oranges had fallen from the tree. And he was like, let me just get these oranges. So he allegedly grabbed those oranges. He took some of those oranges, maybe 2 of them. And then this uncivilized man saw them. He came with his car and he drove directly to them. And he pressed on them next to the fence. He pressed on them against the fence with his car. So right now, as we speak, this 6-year-old might have a permanent disability, or maybe his life will never be the same again because of what happened. Because of, like, for an example, 2 oranges. A 6-year-old. A 6-year-old cannot be compared with a 21-year-old because a 6-year-old doesn't even understand discrimination, doesn't understand, because a 6-year-old is like, we are all equal. We are all human beings. He's a 6-year-old. In other words, a 6-year-old doesn't have that uncivilized mind to think of disappearing someone. A 6-year-old is not like that at all. So that is why it's important to talk about these things. But look at what a 70-year-old did to a 6-year-old. Because from a 70-year-old, you expect the words of wisdom. You expect someone who can advise you. You expect someone who can speak like good things to you. You expect someone who can teach you about maturity, someone who can say, you know what, this is right and this is wrong. This is what you expect from a 70-year-old, because even when you go through the ancient writings, they tell you that a gray hair is like a crown. In other words, it has to be respected. But what can you respect from this 70-year-old, an uncivilized man fighting against a 6-year-old? What can you respect there? There's absolutely nothing you can respect from this 70-year-old. So that is why sometimes we become surprised when a 70-year-old smokes nyawupe, when a 70-year-old is selling nyawupe, or a 70-year-old is selling drugs. You become surprised. You ask yourself, what is going on? In other words, if a 70-year-old behaves like this, then it means you should not expect anything good about the future, or you should not expect anything in the future. If a 70-year-old will behave like this. So this is what happened with his car. He pressed against them on a fence. What do you expect? Because there's no way a 6-year-old can defend himself. There's no way. It's impossible. In other words, if you fight against a 6-year-old, then it means there's something wrong in your mind. Then on top of that, this is what he said to the police. Allegedly, he said to the police, he would do it again. He said, I would do it again. In other words, I would defend my farm. I would protect my farm the same way again if I get a chance. This is what he did. In other words, this is a sign of disrespect. This man disrespected the South African government, because the police officer is someone who's acting on behalf of the government. A police officer is someone who is representing government. A police officer is someone who represents the law and order, is someone who represents justice. Then it means if you disrespect a police officer, then it means you are disrespecting the government, you are disrespecting the law, you are disrespecting the justice system. But you have to ask yourself a question: why it's so easy for them to disrespect police officers like this? Is because police officers these days cannot be respected. And why he did this again is because the justice system is in favor of the rich. In other words, he knows very well that I can do whatever I want. In other words, these are the results of 1994. That's why when we say 1994 was a scam, we are not playing. I know other people may be against us at this time because it has not yet happened to them. This thing has not yet happened to them. So you should not wait until it happens to you. In other words, you should not, like for an example, sleep until it happens to you. So it's time to wake up and say, you know what? Let's speak on behalf of this child. Why? Because now they know very well that this child and his mom now, they have to climb the steep of expensive law, because law has been made expensive. Because you have to understand that the law is interested in evidence. If you have evidence that this happened to you, then the law will judge in your favor. But if the law has been made expensive, it's going to be difficult. It will always favor the rich or the one with resources, because they can afford these expensive lawyers. And these expensive lawyers will complicate everything. In other words, will make it hard for an ordinary person to understand what is going on. That is why when you see all these things, or when you appear in a court of law, sometimes you may even think you are illiterate because of how this law is being handled, so that it cannot be easily understood. So in other words, if things can frustrate you like that, then you have to ask yourself, what is going on in the mind of this woman right now. Because her son has gone through a lot. Her son might have, like for an example, a permanent disability. And now, if she has to challenge this man, she has to go through an expensive law, which might be difficult, for her. So this is a fact. This is the truth. So that is why these people are like, we can disrespect the government anyhow. We can disrespect law and order anyhow, because we have money, especially when they are facing the poor, because they know that no one will be there to act on behalf of the poor, because most of the times poor people have to fight their battles, or their battle by themselves. They have to fight their battle by themselves all the time, because no one will defend them. Even the police, even the law cannot defend you. Why? That is why this man said, I would do it again, without remorse. He was like, I can do it again. This uncivilized man. So I believe that he has to be given his award. In other words, he deserves an award. He has to be given an award to say, you are an uncivilized man of the month, or uncivilized man of the year. This is what is happening. What can we do? What can we do? There's absolutely nothing we can do, because 1994 was a scam. And indeed, ANC government is doing little to deal with these things. Actually, I can say is doing nothing to deal with the likes of racism, because this is what we are going through daily. And these people have guts to even say, I can do it again. So when you plant a tree, one day you will reap its fruits. The time will come when you'll have to reap the fruits of that particular tree. Same applies when you plant injustices, when you plant compromise, when you plant shortcuts. One day you will reap. One day you'll have to harvest and reap. Same applies to this thing of GNU. I'm not attacking it that much, but one day some will have to reap, some will have to harvest and reap the fruits of all these things. So we have to talk about these things whenever we get an opportunity, because no one will. Mainstream media will only talk about these things whenever they want to, but they won't spend their energy talking about them. They won't spend their energy trying to address these things. So if you have an opportunity to do so, then you have to do the right thing. In other words, you have to speak about these things. So this old man here deserves his award of being an uncivilized man of the year or an uncivilized man of the month. So he deserves that award. And again, I just want to say people should not expect AfriForum or DA to do anything. Never expect AfriForum or DA to act on behalf of the poor or to act on behalf of justice or to speak a language of justice. Don't expect them to do anything, because they are very clear when it comes to their policies. In other words, their policies are very clear that they don't care. In other words, a DA and AfriForum, in other words, they are the same. So you should not expect anything from them. So in other words, there are many people who can talk about these issues. We have many people who can address these issues. So we should not expect anything from AfriForum. We should not be fooled. We should not be fooled. But the mistake that we make sometimes is that we become frustrated by the smile. Whenever they smile to us, we get frustrated and we end up thinking everything is okay. We think about Rainbow Nation. We think about all these things, inclusivity, and etc. and etc. We end up losing our minds because of their smile, because their smile has quality. So their smile is there to distract us, because you have to understand that apartheid didn't end in 1994. Apartheid didn't end in 1994. This is what you need to understand. Why? Because their friends in other countries had found out another strategy. This is a strategy of democracy. This is a strategy of peace. This is a strategy of inclusivity. This is a strategy of all these things. In other words, they were like, no, we should no longer use chains. We should no longer use whip. We should no longer use all these things. But instead, we have to use a different strategy. A different strategy is going to be like, for an example, democracy, freedom, and all these other things. This is a strategy they used. So when they sanctioned South Africa during apartheid, like the countries like US and UK, when they sanctioned South Africa during apartheid, they were actually saying to their brothers and sisters, they were actually sending a message to their friends to say, no, now you have to come and join us so that we can use the same strategy. Which strategy? The strategy of democracy, the strategy of inclusivity, the strategy of preaching love, while in reality, there's no such a thing like that. So that is why it's very important. That is why it's very important for people to understand how these things work. So that is why apartheid didn't end in 1994. That is why we are still reaping these fruits of compromise, these fruits of injustices, the fruits of what took place in 1994. This guy, old man, 70-year-old, we expect wisdom from a 70-year-old, but if a 70-year-old would behave like this, then you have to know that indeed life is hard. I'm not saying you have to hate other people. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. But now we have to address this thing because it has just happened. So if it has happened, then in other words, we have to address it. So we should not address it by expecting AfriForum, DA. We should not expect these people to speak, man. AfriForum and DA. If Musima Imani, a Christian, maybe a pastor, if he left DA, in other words, there's absolutely nothing. There's absolutely nothing you should expect from DA. I'm not a fan of Musima Himani, but I'm like, if a man like that, a man who preaches inclusivity, a man who preaches love, a man who preaches like Rainbow Nation, if something like this can happen to him, whereby he complains about discrimination in DA, in other words, you should not expect them to say anything about this situation right now. Never expect them to say anything. Thank you very much. And when we put everything that happened to this young boy on a scale of justice, then we can see that there's no justice. There's no love. There's no fairness. Nothing. I will appreciate if you can just smash the subscribe button, that like button, like never before.